2,097 yards that Adrian Peterson had was good enough for second all-time in the NFL. Eric Dickerson had 2,105. Adrian Peterson missed out on the record by 8 yards. That's incredible how close he came. All right, welcome to Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. I'm Ernie Jennings, your host, and I'm back looking at another team from the NFC, specifically the NFC North. We'll be covering the Minnesota Vikings. I've been covering every team in the NFL, started with the AFC, moved to the NFC now. We're going to get every team in before the beginning of the 2025 season. This is my second video podcast, so I continue to try to improve this podcast in any way possible. Any suggestions is always helpful, but I will keep working on it. So when we're looking at the Minnesota Vikings, even before we do that, we have to remember we're already down to 42 days left before the first regular season game. So pretty exciting to get down to the regular season. And especially if you're like me, you're into fantasy football, just another aspect of it. But starting this podcast and talking about statistics, something I've always liked, just tracking who's the greatest all time, who's got the most yards, whether it's rushing, receiving, quarterback, it's always been something I've enjoyed doing. So it's fun now to turn it into a podcast and just make it something I do. Why keep it to myself when I can share with other people that like the kind of, the same type of things? So we are going to look at the Minnesota Vikings. So despite finishing second in the division, they had a record that was only bettered by two teams. They really had a pretty decent record. But unfortunately for them, one of the teams was the Detroit Lions in their own division. So just the way it goes. So the Vikings finished the season with a record of 14 wins, 3 losses. At home, they were 8-1. On the road, 6-2, and in the division, 4-2. They made it to the wild card game, but they ended up losing pretty decisively to the Los Angeles Rams, 27-9, and that kind of wrapped up their season. Not on a strong note, and I'm sure this season coming up, they're looking forward to doing better, getting farther into the playoffs. So how do the Viking players of 2024 stand in relation to the greatest Viking players of all time and to the greatest NFL players of all time? Well, that's what we're going to find out right now on this episode of Just the Stats NFL. So as I usually do, I start with the coaches. Bud Grant, who was the coach from 1967 to 1985, had 158 wins. By far the most wins for the team. Dennis Green from 1992 to 2001 had 97, so he's second. But Bud Grant really is way up there. Kevin O'Donnell has been the coach since 2022. Kind of interesting. 2022, he was 13-4. Then he had a losing season in 2023, 7-10. Jumped right back up to 14-3 in 2024. But he's got 34 wins, which puts him in 6th right now. He'll move into 5th. That's as far as he's going to get because Brad Childress, who was the coach from 2006 to 2010, has 39. He'll pass him easily. Only needs 6 wins to pass him. But Jerry Burns, who's 4th, has 52, and Kevin O'Donnell won't catch him this year. Very likely next year, even if he only has 9-10 wins, Kevin O'Donnell will be to move right up into 3rd, 4th place in a couple of years. But this coming year, he'll pass Brad Childress for sure. So that's the coaches. Let's look at the quarterbacks now. And obviously, when you think about them, if you're looking beyond or back into the past, Fran Tarkenton was the guy. From 1961 to 1978, he had 33,098 yards. That's the most. Kirk Cousins is third. He was on his way. Obviously, then he got traded on over to or shifted over to Atlanta for 1 year, and now is already on the bench there. But Fran Tarkenton, by far, is the leader. Tommy Kramer, from 1977 to 1989, had 24,775. He's second. Those are your top two. When you're looking currently, obviously, Sam Darnold played just for the 1 year, had a good year. He was 14th already for the team all time with that. So with a new quarterback coming in, J.J. McCarthy, well, he's going to have to start from scratch and move his way up this list. And hopefully he's the answer for the Minnesota Vikings for years to come. And, there's not a lot of shifting of quarterbacks like they've had in the last few years. They've been Kirk Cousins was there for 5-6 seasons and was doing pretty well, but this wasn't his first team. It's nice to have a quarterback, if he's the guy, that's just starting right from his rookie year, even though, unfortunately for McCarthy, he didn't get to play his rookie year, which may be a blessing in disguise. We'll see. Now, when it comes to touchdowns all time, again, Fran Tarkenton, 239. Kirk Cousins, though, had already moved into second in the short time he was with the team. Well, I say 6 seasons, but he had 171. So he really was on a pace to catch Fran Tarkenton in a few years if he'd have stayed with the team. Those are your top two. And again, there's not much use looking at Sam Darnold because he was there just that 1 year. He had 35 touchdowns, though, in one season. That's impressive. And when we look at the season stats, we'll see that. But as far as career-wise, you're not going to see Sam Darnold anywhere on this list too much. When we look at interceptions, Fran Tarkenton again with 194 interceptions, and Tommy Kramer was second with 157. Those are your top two. And obviously, Fran Tarkenton's going to have the most in all these categories because he was the quarterback for the longest time. And it's the same with sacks. Fran Tarkenton was sacked 415 times in his career. That's a lot. And when you combine it with the other team that he played for, he has 570. He played for the New York Giants as well. Interesting career because he started with Minnesota and ended with Minnesota with 5 years in between with New York Giants. It's kind of an interesting career. But he was number one until this last year when Aaron Rodgers passed him. Aaron Rodgers now has 571 sacks in his career. Fran Tarkenton second with 570. So those are your top two right now. And it'll stay that way. Well, I say that too fast. Russell Wilson's fourth with 560. So him and Aaron Rodgers will continue to move up this list even farther. And it's very likely, unless they move Russell Wilson out of the starting position, that he'll pass Fran Tarkenton as well. But those are your leaders as far as the quarterbacks for the Minnesota Vikings. It's all Fran Tarkenton. Let's look at the running backs. There's been some great ones with this team. On Adrian Peterson from 2007 to 2016 is the all-time leader in rushing yards with 11,714. Very impressive number. Second was Robert Smith from 1993 to 2000. He had 6,818. And Dalvin Cook was on his way, but then he kind of just fell off the map in a lot of ways. But Adrian Peterson, Robert Smith, currently the top two. Now, and they haven't been able to hang on to running backs for an extended period of time to move up the list. Right now, there's Aaron Jones, who just came with the team. He's got 1,138. But really, again, this is another area where you're going to see people moving up the list. Now, Aaron Jones, even so, coming over from Green Bay, he is not going to make it up into the top of this list anytime soon. So this is going to be an area where of nobody to watch as far as career stats go. Mostly only single season type records or single game records. Again, it's Adrian Peterson when we're looking at rushing touchdowns by far over Chuck Foreman. Adrian Peterson had 97 touchdowns rushing. Chuck Foreman from 1973 to 1979 had 52. Those are your top players. And again, very a big lead for Adrian Peterson in this category. So just like with a quarterback where you had Fran Tarkenton dominating the category, Adrian Peterson dominates the rushing. So when we shifted over to the receivers, well, again, it's pretty much one guy. You would think Randy Moss some, but Cris Carter from 1990 to 2001 had 12,383 yards on a total of 1,004 receptions. So very impressive. And that 1,004 for Cris Carter, combined with the time he spent with Philadelphia, puts Cris Carter at sixth all time with 1,101. So you can see that he had almost the vast majority of his receptions were with the Minnesota Vikings. He really bloomed after leaving Philadelphia. He was there for 3 years, had less than 100 receptions there. He comes over to Minnesota and has 1,004 for that total of 12,383 yards. When it comes to just receptions, Randy Moss was second from 1998 to 2010, had 587 receptions, second all-time on the team. Justin Jefferson is already fourth with 495. Well, I'm sorry. Let me look at that real quick. Justin Jefferson's fifth with 495. He's going to easily probably move all the way into second, passing Randy Moss with his 587. I mean, he needs less than 100, and for Justin Jefferson, 100 receptions in a season is not a problem. So, barring injury, which I don't even like to say because that's an obvious statement, he will move from fifth to second, and only, which though barely puts him halfway, just a little over halfway to catching Cris Carter. So even though he can get to second quite quickly, it's going to be a long time before he passes Cris Carter all time. That's if he stays with the team, which you would think Minnesota would not want to see Justin Jefferson go anywhere. But he is definitely the guy for the team right now. TJ Hawkinson, as far as tight end right now, has 196 receptions for the team. So that's impressive. And Jordan Addison, also another good receiver, has 133. But it's the Jefferson game right now. All time, Steve Jordan from 1982 to 1994 as a tight end had 498 receptions to be fourth, which Justin Jefferson will probably pass in the very first game of the season. But he's the top tight end currently on the team, or was on the team. So going back to the yards, again, Cris Carter with 12,383. Randy Moss is second with 9,316 yards. And we're looking at the all-time record. looking at Cris Carter or Randy Moss is fourth all time. So he has 9,316, which is the majority of his yardage. And then he played for a few other teams, Oakland, New England, and back to Minnesota for a year. He bounced around quite a bit, Tennessee, and the second part of his career. But he ended up with 15,292 yards to finish fourth all time in the NFL. But obviously, most of those, so 2/3 of the yardage was with the Minnesota Vikings. Justin Jefferson, already fourth, will easily pass Anthony Carter, who's in third this season, probably in his third game at the most. Justin Jefferson has 7,432 yards. Anthony Carter has 7,636. So he needs 205 yards to pass Anthony Carter. Could do it one game, but more likely it'll be two games, and he should be on his way to third. And he won't catch Randy Moss this year. Should easily catch him next year. I mean, I guess he could catch him. He needs 1,900 yards, not impossible, but he'd be flirting with the all-time yards in a single season held by Calvin Johnson, I believe. But he'll definitely catch Randy Moss next season, and then it'll be a couple years before he can reach Cris Carter. But Justin Jefferson is flying up the all-time record at the pace he's currently on. He's averaging 15 yards of reception, and that's what's going to help him. That's plus the amount of receptions he's getting every season. I mean, the 100, the 1,000-yard seasons, he's just racking them up, which is what's going to help him make it to the top. When it comes to tight ends, Steve Jordan from 1982 to 1994 leads the team with 6,307 yards. So right now, Hawkinson only has 1,934. So he's a long way from being the guy that could ultimately be the leading tight end for the team. Now, when it comes to TDs, Cris Carter has 110 TDs receiving. That's an impressive number. Cris Carter ended with 130 TDs. What's amazing is this is probably one of the very few teams I can think of that has two players that are so good as far as touchdowns go. Randy Moss is second on the team with 92, but overall, all time, Randy Moss is second with 156, only behind Jerry Rice, who had 197. So you've got Randy Moss and Cris Carter in the top four. Terrell Owens is between them, but that's it. Quite a pair of receivers when you're talking about getting touchdowns. Very impressive. All right, let's look at the defense. Now, when we're talking about the defense, and we're going to start with interceptions, Paul Krause, who is the all-time NFL leader in receptions. He played for two teams, but with Minnesota, he had 53 interceptions. He ended his career with 81. That's the all-time leader in interceptions. Harrison Smith has 37 to be fifth on the team, which is impressive. He's tied actually with Joey Brown for fourth. He needs 3 interceptions to tie for third and 4 to move into third place all time. That's very impressive because you just don't see too many players from the 21st century, even generally in the top 10 on any team. So Harrison Smith's had a pretty good career as far as interceptions go in this day and age. But Paul Krause is the top guy all time. Now, when we move over to tackles for loss, you've got Danielle Hunter has 108 tackles for loss for the Minnesota Vikings. That's the best. But not far behind are Kevin Williams and Jared Allen, who both have 104. Daniel Hunter was with the team until 2023, through the 2023 season. Kevin Williams and Jared Allen played with the team until through the year 2013. And then that's when they both left. But they both had also reached the 100 tackles for loss mark, which is pretty impressive, actually. Those are your top three right now. And when I'm looking at players from this season, or this, Harrison Smith again, obviously. Harrison Smith has 48 tackles for loss. So nobody's really close who's currently on the team to making the 100 tackles for loss category. It's going to be a while, and it won't be Harrison Smith. He's been on the team since 2012. He's not going to make it. It's going to have to be somebody else down the road. Possibly Patrick Jones, Andrew Van Ginkel, who's 29th already on the team, is impressive. He's already has 18, so in one season. So he's on a good pace. The last category we'll look at as far as career goes is sacks. Here you have Carl Eller has 130.5 sacks to lead the team. That's the most. Jim Marshall's second with 128. That's a pair because Carl Eller played from 1964 to 1978. Jim Marshall played from 1961 to 1979. So you had the top two players playing a lot of their career at the same time together. That is a powerful Purple People Eaters. They were great players at the time. Looking at the numbers, not quite enough to make the top 10, but still very impressive. Alan Page has 108.5 with Minnesota. Also, he was also on the team from 1967 to 1978. So you had all three of them at the same time on the team. But Alan Page ended up with 148.5. So obviously he had most of them with the Minnesota Vikings. He finished out his season with Chicago. But while with Minnesota, he had the most of them. But he ended up with 148.5 sacks, which puts him 8th on the unofficial list, which started in 1960 versus the official list, quote unquote, that started in 1982. So those are your top defenders. And again, when we're looking at current players, again, there's nobody that's on the team right now that's going to be too far up the list. Brian Asamoah is 17th in sacks for the team. And, well, no, that's not right. Let me double check this here. See who's the best player currently on the team as far as sacks go. Harrison Smith again, but he's, like I said, he's been on the team since 2012. He's got 20 and a half sacks. So honestly, I guess there really isn't anybody currently on the team that's impressing in the defensive categories. So it's going to be a while before you see anybody move up the list too far. All right, let's move over to the season records. Often this is where you see some changes, some players that maybe didn't hang around with the team long enough, but hold single season records. So as far as passing yards in a single season, Dante Culpepper, which I would have not guessed. I'm thinking of him as more of a runner, but in 2004, he had 4,717 yards passing. That's the number one. Kirk Cousins second. In 2022, he had 4,547. So those are the top numbers for the team. Let me check out this other chart here. So Sam Darnold this past season actually had a very good season. He ended up finishing third all-time in single-season numbers for Minnesota with 4,319 yards passing. So Well, it'd be nice to see if he was going to hang around, but he didn't hang around. He moved on. And now we get to see how the new quarterback's going to do for the team. It's going to be interesting to watch, to see how J.J. McCarthy does. When it comes to touchdowns in a single season, well, that's Dante Culpepper. The same season had 39, and Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold are tied with 35. Those are your top numbers. This past season, well, Joe Burrow led in yards with 4,918. Sam Darnold ended up fifth in the NFL in yardage. And when you're looking at TDs, he also ended up fifth in the TD category. One of only 5 quarterbacks, in fact, who threw for more than 30 touchdowns. He had 35, and no one else after him. Bo Nix had 29, but that was the next number. Joe Burrow led with 43 touchdowns. Joe Burrow had an incredible year. There was a lot of good quarterbacks this past season. When it comes to interceptions in a single season for the team, Fran Tarkenton had 32 interceptions in a single season. That's by far the highest number. Sam Darnold ended the season with 12. Not too bad. Not when you're throwing 35 touchdowns. That's not too bad. Now, when it comes to sacks in a single season, Sam Darnold, unfortunately for him, was sacked 48 times to beat out Dante Culpepper, who had 47 in 2002, the same year he had all the yards. Well, it wasn't that year. It was actually in 2002 that 2004 was the year he had the most yards. In 2002, he was sacked 47 times. Sam Darnold was sacked 48. Now, that was good enough to put him tied for fourth. Caleb Williams led the NFL last season with 68 times being sacked, and drops way down to C.J. Stroud had 52. Geno Smith for Seattle had 50, and then Sam Darnold and Joe Burrow each had 48 sacks. So those are your leaders, whether it was a positive category or a negative category. Those are the leaders. All right, let's look at the running backs this past season and all time. Well, obviously, when you have one of the greatest players, Adrian Peterson, you're going to have him most likely at the top of the list as far as yards go. Adrian Peterson in 2012 had 2,097 yards rushing. That's the most ever. He also has a second in 2008. He had 1,760 yards. That's the best. When we're looking at the Minnesota Vikings from this past season, as far as rushing goes, that would be Aaron Jones, who had 1,138 yards, which puts him at 18th all-time on the team's list. That 2,097 yards that Adrian Peterson had was good enough for second all-time in the NFL. Eric Dickerson had 2,105. Adrian Peterson missed out on the record by 8 yards. That's incredible how close he came to Eric Dickerson. Really something else. It was a really great season for him. Last season, as far as the entire NFL goes, the leader obviously was Saquon Barkley, who had another 2,000-yard season, as Adrian Peterson did. He had 2,005 yards, which was very impressive. Looking at Aaron Jones finished in the NFL 9th all-time, or 9th in 2024, I should say. When we're looking at touchdowns in a single season, again, it was Adrian Peterson, but not in that big year when he had 2,000 yards. It was a year when he only had 1,383, but he had 18 rushing touchdowns in 2009. That's the best for the team. Dalvin Cook in 2020 had 16. Those are your top 2 numbers. 18 is quite a bit more than anybody else has had. When we're looking at this past season, again, it was Aaron Jones, but Aaron Jones only had 5 rushing touchdowns. So nobody that far out in the lead. In the NFL, though, in touchdowns this past season rushing, there was 3 players: Derrick Henry for Baltimore, Jahmyr Gibbs for Detroit, and James Cook for Buffalo. All had 16. So compared to the 5 that Aaron Jones had, which put him way back at 33rd in the NFL as far as rushing touchdowns. But those are your leaders in rushing. Now, when we look at receivers, again, there's a couple of them. Let me get the right page here. When looking at the receivers, all right. Now, this is a team with more receivers with 100 receptions. Some teams have 1 or 2, but Justin Jefferson in 2022 had 128 receptions to break the record that Cris Carter had held since 1994 and 1995 when he had 122. Justin Jefferson had 128. So those are your top 3. They have 9 times a player has had 100 or more receptions, and Justin Jefferson has 3 of those already. 3 out of his 5 seasons, he's already had 100 or more receptions. Very impressive. Now, when we look at this past season, when it comes to receptions, Justin Jefferson had 103 receptions, which puts him at 8th on the team's all-time list. And in the NFL this past season, 103 puts him at 6th. There were 10 players in 2024 in the NFL who had 100 or more receptions. That's a lot, and Justin Jefferson just made it over 100 himself. Again, when we're looking at the top guy, just as the quarterback was a Cincinnati Bengal, Ja'Marr Chase is for the Bengals is also topping the list in receptions. He had 127 this past season. And in yards, again, it was Chase. He had 1,708 yards. For the Minnesota Vikings all time, Justin Jefferson, also in 2022, when he had 128 receptions, had 1,809 yards. That's the most. He broke the record that Randy Moss had set in 2003 when he had 1,632 yards. So the record was there for 19 years before Justin Jefferson broke it. He's definitely the guy to watch. One of the top 2, really. Well, there's 3, but he's even better overall right now and career-wise than Chase is. Even though Chase had a good year this year, Jefferson's been very consistent for the most part. And him and CeeDee Lamb are really the 2 currently that are moving up the list even faster than Ja'Marr Chase when you're talking about career-wise. So like I said, this past season, Justin Jefferson had an amazing 1,533 yards, which was 4th all time. So already Justin Jefferson has 4 of the top 7 1,000-yard seasons and 3 of the top 4. He's really crushing it in Minnesota's. All right. Like I said, that put Justin Jefferson 2nd in 2024 with his 1,533, just behind Ja'Marr Chase. And huge. Those 2 were by far the lead. I mean, Brian Thomas for the Jacksonville Jaguars had 1,282 to finish 3rd. So 251-yard lead by Jefferson over the 3rd-place guy. It's pretty impressive. Now, when we're talking about TDs in a single season, well, this is a little different. This is Randy Moss and Cris Carter. Randy Moss has twice had 17 TDs, 1998 and 2003, and Cris Carter in 1995 had 17. That's the top all time for that team. Justin Jefferson this past year had his biggest number with 10, which puts him tied for 13th. He's done it twice already. Did it in 2021, and in 2024 he had 10. Now, when we're looking at the entire NFL, Jamar Chase again led with 17 touchdowns. With 10, that put Justin Jefferson at 6th in the NFL this past season. What kind of holds Jefferson back when you're looking at the totals is Jordan Addison had 9 on a half the yardage of Justin Jefferson, and with 55 less receptions, he had 9 touchdowns to Jefferson's 10. So if that doesn't get split so evenly, you could see Justin Jefferson having more than 10 this next season. All right. That is your wide receivers for Minnesota. They've had some great ones. I mean, you're talking Randy Moss, Cris Carter, and now Justin Jefferson. Some really impressive wide receivers. We'll talk more about Jefferson in a minute. All right. So when we're looking at the defense for the team, we'll start with interceptions. And Paul Krause, we're talking single season here now. Paul Krause had 10 interceptions in 1975. That's the most. Then you have 3 players with 9. Interestingly, 2 of them were in the 21st century in 2003 and 2005. That's your top players as far as interceptions go. And none of those numbers are really close to the top 10, 15. Now, tackles for loss, that's interesting. Danielle Hunter, the most, in 2023 had 23 tackles for loss. Jared Allen's on this list twice. We're talking about tackles for loss with 20 or more, too. But Jared Allen in 2011 had 21, and in 2008, he had 20. Very impressive, though Daniel Hunter, like I said, in 2023 had 23, and in 2018 he had 21. So a little bit better even than Jared Allen as far as tackles for loss. Really good numbers. And the last category we're going to look at is sacks. I should be looking at this also, looking at this past season. Let's back up a little bit and look at some of these numbers for the team. Byron Murphy had 6 interceptions to lead the team. This is a very impressive team as far as interceptions go. I mean, Harrison Smith had 3. Cameron Bynum had 3. They had a lot of interceptions this past season for as team-wise. I think the Jaguars I was looking at, they had maybe 6 total for the entire season. Nobody had more than 1. I mean, you've got 7 players with 2 or more and another 4 with 1. So it was very good defense as far as turnovers go for that category. Now, when it comes to tackles for loss, good numbers by 2 players, Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Greenard. Both newer on the team, I should say. They each had 18. So not quite the tackles for loss to reach the 20 mark, which would have put them up there all-time numbers for the team, but very close. That's impressive. Now, when we're looking at sacks, a little bit behind in that category. All-time for the team, Carl Eller had 15 tackles for or sacks, I should say, twice. Very incredible that he did that. 1977 and 1969. He did it twice. Jared Allen then also did it twice. 2008 and 2009, he had 14 and a half, just a half sack behind. And then, interesting, Chris Dolman, Daniel Hunter did it twice, but Chris Dolman in 1992 had 14 and a half, and Daniel Hunter in 2018 and 2019 had 14 and a half. So they had a lot of guys between 14 and a half and 15. For the team this past season, Jonathan Greenard had 12. Andrew Van Ginkel had 11 and a half. They led the team. So those look like your 2 top players this coming season. They definitely were, as far as tackles for loss and sacks, they were the top two. Now, when we're looking at the NFL in those two categories as a whole, if I can get over there, in tackles for loss, well, he had 18. Jonathan Greenard and Ginkle both had 18. They were tied for fourth in the NFL. Myles Garrett had 22. Trey Hendrickson and TJ Watt had 19. So they were just right behind TJ Watt, who just got that record contract. So not bad. So they might be able to look for a big payday a couple years from now. And then when you're looking at that last category of sacks, well, that's a category where Trey Hendrickson had 17 and a half. Myles Garrett had 14. And then Greenard ended up fifth with 12. So not too bad in those categories. So that's your Minnesota Vikings career-wise and season-wise. Now, looking at the outlook for the team as a team, the odds makers have them, they're over under at 8.5 wins. I don't know. I don't even understand that. I think it's because of McCarthy. Hasn't played a down yet in the NFL. So I guess they're counting that in. But, with the coaching staff of Minnesota, they brought Sam Darnold in. Sam Darnold never had a season like he had last season with the Minnesota Vikings. They turned him into one of the best players, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think that J.J. McCarthy will be able to do the same thing that Sam Darnold did, and maybe even better. And we'll see how well this works out for Sam Darnold as he moves on to a new team and see how he looks when he's not with the Minnesota Vikings. But J.J. McCarthy, he is not technically a rookie because this is his second year, but he's never had a snap behind center. But getting hurt like he did last year, he had an entire year to watch the Vikings offense, learn the system, and he's got it down. He should be ready to go. He's a better runner than Sam Darnold, and he's just got some great receivers. I think Justin Jefferson is quarterback proof. It doesn't seem to matter who the quarterback is. He's going to get his receptions. So if he can just throw it in his general direction, I think he'll be fine. So I'm not discounting. I just can't understand the 8.5 wins, actually. They had 14. I mean, you're saying that Minnesota, they definitely have a tougher season ahead of them as far as projected teams are playing and wins and losses. But to say that over under on 9, I definitely bet they're going to get 9 or more. And I think they'll get, I don't see even 10 being a problem. 14, I don't think so. The teams around them have improved. Detroit, even Chicago is going to be tougher than last year. But definitely going to beat the over-under, I think, of 8.5 wins. So when you're looking at the fantasy aspect of this team, obviously Justin Jefferson is a no-brainer in the first round. In fact, in the top 5, I don't see that anything different for him. He is definitely the one player that you're going to want to go for sure. Hawkinson's interesting, and that will play out. And we'll see how many games Addison, if any, he misses if he's suspended. But Hawkinson's going anywhere between the 6th and 8th round. He could be a nice pickup. I don't know about Jones as far as the running back. He just doesn't get enough carries. Is he going to get hurt this season? He had a pretty good season last year, though. You can't say he didn't, but he's going in the 6th round. That's not bad, I guess, for him. Addison, We're going to have to wait and see if you want to pick him up. He's going as late as the 7th round. But Mason, who's behind Aaron Jones, you can pick him up anywhere between the 8th and 10th rounds. If you can get him in the 10th round, he's a definite pickup because I think he's going to be impressive, especially if Aaron Jones goes down. But it's going to be interesting to see how many carries he gets and how much he can take away from Aaron Jones and become more dominant, in fact. And then as far as the quarterback, you can get McCarthy as late as the 12th round in your draft. And he may not be a bad pickup. I mean, look at what Sam Darnold did last year. He had 35 touchdowns, and 4,300 yards. But you add a few yards by McCarthy rushing. I mean, he could be a shocker. If you don't pick quarterbacks early in your league and you wait, he might be a surprise pickup. I mean, if you can get him in the 12th round, you get another quarterback. If he doesn't turn out, you can drop McCarthy, and it's not a big deal. Even if you get him as early as the 10th round, I don't think you have to worry about picking up McCarthy before the 10th round. I think he'll still be sitting on the, as somebody you can pick up. Pick him up in the 10th round even, and you find out, he's not really looking that great, then you can drop him. It's not a problem. But definitely you want to get Jefferson if you have the opportunity. He had 1,500 yards last year. I don't see it changing. Their running game, it's not bad, but I just still think Jefferson's going to be the guy. And he only had 10 touchdowns last season. I think you could see a little spike as far as that goes, which would help as well. So we'll see. But he's definitely the guy. The rest of them, it's kind of interesting. He is the guy, and you don't have another Minnesota Viking offensive player that you really want to jump out there for until at least the 6th round. So, well, good luck to the Minnesota Vikings. It's going to be interesting to watch McCarthy, see how well he does play. But I expect he'll do fairly well. But it'll be fun to watch. All right, so stick around as I continue through the NFC North so you can hear about the greatest player from your team, whoever that might be. You can check out my previous podcasts. This is only the second one and the first one I've done that involves a team specifically. But if you want to watch on YouTube, you can go there, leave a comment if you want. That's appreciated. Any suggestions, or if I happen to make a mistake about a number I quoted, feel free to let me know and I will correct it. But I appreciate you listening. You can, like I said, catch me now on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram. You can get me there at Just the Stats NFL. And I also have Just the Stats at gmail.com if you want to send me a message that way. Appreciate you listening. I really do. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. So this is a wrap for this episode of Just the Stats NFL. So until next time, I am out.